Far beneath the waves of the ocean, in the kingdom of Oshiera, Queen Nerissa lived with her only daughter, Lyanna. Nerissa loved her little girl more than anything in the world. She often took her to quiet parts of the sea where the waters were calm, far from the noisy crowds of other merfolk. One morning, Nerissa guided Lyanna toward a stream that stretched from the ocean all the way to the land. The water was clear, bright as glass, and full of darting silver fish. Nerissa liked this stream because it was peaceful and hidden, a safe place to play with her child. Lyanna clapped her small hands and laughed as she chased the fish. She splashed water with her tail, sending tiny ripples dancing on the surface. To Lyanna, the ocean was endless. She believed it was the whole world. She had never seen the land or the strange people who lived there. As the two played, Nerissa suddenly felt uneasy. The water above seemed to shift with movement. Her sharp ears caught faint sounds, footsteps, laughter, voices. Humans. Lyanna, Nerissa whispered, her voice tight. Stay close to me. But before she could gather her daughter into her arms, shadows appeared at the edge of the stream. Two young women, dressed in simple cloth wraps, came down the slope, each carrying a clay pot. They were laughing as they bent to scoop water, the sunlight catching their faces. Startled, Nerissa slipped back into the deeper current to hide. She feared humans. Many stories had been told in Oshiera about their nets and their fire. She sank low, holding her breath, her heart pounding. But in her hurry, she did not notice that Lyanna was still at the surface. The little mare-child floated just beyond the weeds, her wide eyes fixed on the strangers. She had never seen humans before. They looked like her, yet not like her. They had legs instead of tails, and their skin was not touched by the glow of the sea. Lyanna was fascinated. She did not understand danger, nor did she know she was supposed to hide. Instead, she leaned forward, watching the women fill their pots. Lyanna stayed very still, her little hands resting on the smooth stones by the water's edge. And her bright eyes followed every move the women made. The two maidens from the palace, Althea and Ceres, laughed as they filled their clay pots. They had come to fetch water for the queen's washing hall. To them, this stream was only a quiet place outside the city walls, a place they had visited many times. But this time was different. As Ceres bent low to dip her pot, she caught the faintest movement in the corner of her eye. She turned quickly, but saw nothing more than rippling water. She frowned. "Did you see that?" she asked. "See what?" Althea said, balancing her pot on her hip. "I thought I saw someone. A child, maybe." Althea chuckled. "Don't be foolish. No one brings children here. Come, we'll be late if we linger." Lyanna's heart beat faster. She did not know why she wanted to follow these women, but something inside her pulled her forward. She wanted to know who they were, where they lived, and why they had legs instead of tails. When the women turned to leave, Lyanna swam quickly after them. She reached the edge of the stream where the water met the land. She hesitated only for a moment before climbing onto the stones. And then it happened. The moment her body touched the dry earth, her tail shimmered and changed. The scales melted away, and in their place appeared two slender legs. Her fins curled and folded into soft feet. Lyanna gasped. She looked down at herself, blinking in amazement. She was no longer a mere child. She was like them. Her bare feet touched the soil, strange and rough beneath her. She stumbled a little, but she followed, careful not to make a sound. The maidens did not notice the quiet figure trailing them. They walked back along the dusty path toward the palace of Everdell, their clay pots balanced high. Behind them, Lyanna followed, her first steps on land leading her toward a new life she never imagined. The maidens passed through the outer gate without noticing her. The guards nodded at them and let them enter, for they recognized the women as servants of the queen. But Lyanna, small and barefoot, stood uncertain at the threshold. She feared the tall men holding spears. She had never seen weapons before, and they frightened her. One guard, a man with kind eyes named Gareth, noticed her. "Little one," he said gently, "where have you come from?" Lyanna said nothing. She lowered her gaze, clutching her hands together. She had no words for him, no name to give. She did not even know how to explain who she was. Something about her silence, and the strange glow in her eyes, caught Gareth's heart. He crouched low and said, "Don't be afraid. No one will harm you here." He looked toward the palace hall, wondering if he should send her away. But at that very moment, the two maidens returned. They had finished delivering the water to the washing room and were startled to see the child by the gate. "Where did she come from?" Althea asked, frowning. "She followed us," Gareth replied. Do you know her? The women shook their heads. She looks lost, Saris whispered, studying the girl. Lioness stood quietly, her damp hair falling around her shoulders. Even in her silence, there was something striking about her, an air of beauty that was not ordinary. Her skin glowed faintly, as though kissed by moonlight, and her dark eyes held a depth beyond her years. Before more questions could be asked, a royal messenger hurried out of the palace. The queen requests the presence of Althea and Saris, he announced. The maidens bowed and went inside. Gareth hesitated, but finally gestured for the child to follow too. Come, he said softly. Perhaps the queen will know what to do with you. And so, step by step, Lionel entered the palace of Everdell. The palace of Everdell was bright and full of life. Long hallways lined with tall windows spilled sunlight onto polished floors. Servants moved quickly, carrying baskets, trays, and folded cloths. Lionel trailed behind Gareth, her small feet echoing softly as she walked. At last, they reached the queen's hall. The air smelled of roses, for fresh flowers decorated every corner. Queen Maribel sat upon a carved chair of ivory wood, her silver crown gleaming in her dark hair. She was a woman of grace and beauty, though her eyes often carried a shadow of sadness. When the maidens Althea and Saris bowed before her, Lionel stood shyly at the edge of the hall. She did not know what to do, so she lowered her head, wishing to be invisible. But Queen Maribel's gaze found her at once. "Who is that child?" the queen asked, her voice calm yet curious. Gareth stepped forward. "Your Majesty, she was found outside the gates. She followed the maidens from the stream. None know her name." The queen's eyes softened as she studied the girl. Lionel slowly lifted her head, and their eyes met. For a moment, the hall grew silent, as though the air itself held its breath. Maribel saw a beauty in the child that she could not explain. It was not only the smoothness of her skin or the shine of her hair, it was something deeper. The girl seemed to carry the sea within her eyes, a hidden world of mystery and calm. "Come here, child," the queen said gently. Lionel hesitated, then stepped forward. Her steps were clumsy, but she moved bravely until she stood before the queen. "What is your name?" Maribel asked. Lionel parted her lips, but no words came. She had never spoken to humans before. She looked down in silence. The queen reached out and touched her cheek. Her hand was warm, kind, and motherly. Something stirred in Maribel's heart, something she had long buried. For many years she and King Alaric had longed for a child, yet none had come. Now, as she looked at this lost little girl, she felt a spark of hope. "She is beautiful," Maribel whispered. Althea and Saris glanced at each other. They knew the queen's heartache, and they understood her sudden tenderness. "Your Majesty," Gareth said carefully, "shall I send her away or—" "No," Maribel interrupted firmly. "She will stay here." The queen stood and held the girl's hand. "From this day you belong to Everdell. Until we learn your true story, I will treat you as my own." The hall filled with murmurs, but no one dared to question the queen's decision. For the first time in her life, Lionel felt the warmth of belonging. She did not yet understand what it meant to live among humans, nor did the queen know the secret of the child she had welcomed. But from that day, the mermaid girl became the treasure of the palace. That evening, the palace buzzed with whispers. Word had spread quickly. The queen had brought a strange child into the royal halls. By sunset, King Alaric returned from the council hall. He was a strong man with sharp eyes, yet his heart was gentle when it came to his queen. He found Maribel sitting by the balcony, with Lionel curled up beside her, resting her head against the queen's arm. Alaric paused. The sight of his wife smiling softly, her hand stroking the girl's hair, startled him. He had not seen Maribel smile like that in years. "Maribel," he said, his voice low but firm. "Who is this child?" The queen looked up at him, her eyes shining. "She came to the palace today, lost, alone, as if sent by fate itself." The king stepped closer, studying the girl. Lionel shifted uneasily under his gaze. She could sense his power, and it made her nervous. "Does she have a name?" he asked. "She would not speak," Maribel replied. "But I feel something in her, Alaric. Something I cannot explain. She is not like other children." The king frowned. "A stranger at our gates, with no family, no word of who she is. This could be dangerous." "But look at her," Maribel pleaded softly. "Is she not a gift? You know how long I have prayed for a child. Perhaps the gods have answered in their own way." Her voice trembled, and Alaric's sternness weakened. He looked again at the girl. "Very well. She will stay. But we must keep watch. No one beyond these walls must know she came to us from nowhere." Maribel's face lit with relief. She kissed her husband's hand and whispered, "Thank you." Alaric knelt before Lionel. His voice softened, though it still carried weight. "Child, if you are to remain here, you must live as one of us. From this day forward, you are under my protection. Do you understand?" Lionel stared at him. She did not fully understand his words, but she felt his promise. She nodded gently. "Then she is ours," Maribel said firmly. "From this night, she is a daughter of Everdell." And so it was decided. The little mermaid child, unknown to all, became the adopted princess of the land. Life inside the palace was nothing like Lionel had ever known. She was given a small chamber near the queen's rooms, with a soft bed covered in silken sheets. Servants brought her food on silver plates: warm bread, honey, roasted meat, and sweet fruits. It was strange to her, for under the sea she had eaten only fish, sea plants, and shells filled with pearls. Lionel watched everything with wide eyes. The way people bowed before the king and queen, the sound of trumpets calling for meals, the way lanterns lit up the hallways at night. The palace was full of wonders. But though she looked like any other child, her secret followed her. Sometimes, when she bathed, the servants swore they saw a faint shimmer on her legs, like scales flashing beneath her skin. Other times, her hair smelled faintly of salt water, even when she had not been near the river. At night, when the moon rose high, Lionel would creep to the palace gardens. There was a fountain there, shaped like a dolphin, with clear water pouring into a marble pool. She would dip her hands inside and whisper to it as though it could hear. She missed the sea, her home beneath the waves, though she could not tell anyone. The queen, however, noticed her strangeness. "Child," Maribel asked one morning, brushing Lionel's hair, "why do you always go near the fountain at night?" Lionel lowered her gaze. Words sat heavy in her mouth. At last, she whispered, "The water makes me feel safe." Maribel smiled gently, though a shadow of curiosity flickered in her eyes. "Then you may visit it as often as you wish." In the palace halls, people began whispering about her. Some said she was blessed. Others said she was cursed. But the queen defended her always, and the king's command kept any harsh tongue quiet. Still, Lionel carried her secret. She had legs now, but sometimes she dreamt of her tail, silver and shining, sweeping through the deep ocean. She often wondered, would it return if she touched the river again? Or was it gone forever? At feasts, when Lionel sat beside Queen Maribel, the courtiers stared. Some admired her beauty, her soft features, and her graceful manner for a child. Others frowned, wondering where she had come from and why no one spoke of her family. One evening, during a banquet, Lord Carden, a stern noble with cold eyes, leaned toward his companion. "A child with no name, no bloodline, suddenly raised as princess? It is unnatural. The queen hides something." His words spread like fire among the tables. By the time the night ended, half the court was murmuring suspicions. Lionel, though young, could feel the stares. She ate quietly, her fingers trembling as she lifted her spoon. She did not understand the full weight of their whispers, but she knew they doubted her. After the feast, she overheard two servants speaking in the corridor. "They say she came from the woods, lost and wandering." No. My cousin swears she was found by the river. Perhaps she's a witch's child." Lionel pressed her back against the wall, her heart beating fast. Witch. She had never heard the word before, but it sounded cruel. When she returned to her chamber that night, she sat by the window, staring at the moonlight. She whispered softly, "Do they know? Do they see what I am?" But no answer came, only the sound of the night wind. The palace of Everdell was preparing for the Festival of Flames, a celebration held once every year when the harvest ended. The courtyards were dressed with red banners, golden lanterns, and great torches that lit the night sky. For the first time, Lionel was to stand beside the queen during the festival. The idea filled her with excitement and fear. She had never been surrounded by so many people at once. When the evening came, the villagers and nobles crowded into the grand square outside the palace gates. The king gave a speech of blessing, the queen smiled gracefully, and Lionel stood at her side in a gown of pale silver. At first, she tried to ignore it. She joined Queen Maribel in morning walks through the palace gardens, listened to the king's lessons on history, and practiced speaking with the court ladies. Far beneath the waves, Queen Nerissa often thought of her daughter. Every day, her heart ached with longing. She would swim to the quiet stream where Lionel used to laugh and splash, hoping to feel her presence again. She would run her fingers over the smooth stones, close her eyes, and whisper, "My child, where are you?" One night, as she lingered near the stream, Nerissa heard voices. Curious, she hid behind the reeds. Two young palace maids walked along the bank, carrying empty clay pots. They were speaking in low tones, yet the words carried clearly across the still water. "Have you seen her?" one whispered. "The child the queen has taken in?" "Yes," the other replied. "She is strange, beautiful, but not like us. Some say she came from the river." Nerissa's breath caught. Her daughter. They were speaking of her daughter. Heart pounding, she rose from the water and followed them quietly, her shimmering tail hidden beneath a wrap of wet cloth. She moved carefully, keeping to the shadows, until she reached the palace walls of Everdell. She slipped past the gates when the guards turned, her steps silent and graceful, though her eyes were burning with fear and hope. The halls glittered with light, unlike anything she had ever seen. Yet she cared nothing for the gold or marble, only for the child she longed to see again. At last, she entered the queen's chamber. There, bathed in lamplight, sat Lyanna, dressed in silken gowns, her damp hair falling over her shoulders. She sat beside Queen Maribel, who smiled warmly at her as though she were her own daughter. Nerissa froze. Her heart swelled with both relief and pain. Her child was safe, but she was not hers alone anymore. "Lyanna," she whispered, her voice breaking as she stepped forward. The girl's head turned. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the palace vanished from her mind. "Mother!" Lyanna rushed into her arms, clinging tightly. Nerissa held her close, her tears mingling with her daughter's hair. Queen Maribel stood, startled, her face pale with shock. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice unsteady. Nerissa lifted her head, her gaze steady though her heart trembled. "I am her mother," she said softly. "I have come to take back my child."